Okay, so we're holding Daf Yud Aleph Amud Aleph, and we're up to the last final line on Daf Yud Amud Beis. It's almost a neat Daf, like Daf Yomi, where you can kind of stop on the end of the Amud Mamish. You can finish the end of the Daf Yud Aleph Amud Aleph, but we have to start a few words earlier. Bottom of Daf Yud Amud Beis. So Amud Rav Chaim Bar Chanina says as follows: Neima Nemra Parshas Reitzkim Beloshin Azah. Why is the Parshas Reitzkim said Beloshin Azah? So what are we referring to? We're referring to in Yeshua. In Yeshua, where so the Parshas Ari Miklat is in the Torah, is in Parshas whatever Mishpatim, in Parshas Maseh, in Parshas Shoftim, all over the Torah. But that's the instruction. But when the Ari Miklat were actually made, it was recorded in. I think Hashem told Yeshua again. Now it's time to make it, as we'll soon see. But it's in Yeshua, there's a Parshas Reitzkim. And the Shaila is Neima Nemar Parshas Reitzkim Beloshin Azah. Why does it say Parshas Reitzkim Beloshin Azah? Meaning with a firm lashon, with a gvuradik lashon. The Ksiv says in Pasuk, Vayidaba Hashem el Yeshua leiman. When Hashem spoke to Yeshua, Daber el b'nei Yisrael leiman. Lashon Daber we know is kasha. And the question, as Rashi explains, we'll see in Rashi inside soon. But the kasha is the Torah says Vayidaba Hashem el Yeshua leiman all over. So what's the kasha? But in Yeshua it doesn't. In Yeshua the lashon of Yeshua is Vayomer. And this is an exception where it says Vayidaber. So the question is, why did Parshas Reitzkim, the Parsha of Ari Miklat, say Vayidaber, right? The Pasuk says Vayidaber Shem Yisroel, Medaber b'nei Yisrael, Mitunu lechem es Ari Miklat asher dibarti aleichem biyad Moshe. Go make the Ari Miklat, which I had spoken to Moshe to do. So why is it Beloshin Azah? So Gemara answers Mimnei shehein shel Torah. Yeah, Gemara answers because shehein shel Torah, meaning to say that it's concerning things which the Torah already discusses. To be Mekayim, a mitzvah which was written in the Torah. Most of Yeshua, the rest of Yeshua has nothing to do with the Torah. It's not. But over here, HaKadosh Baruch Hu was commanding Yeshua to fulfill that which was said in Torah's Moshe, that which HaKadosh Baruch Hu instructed in Torah's Moshe. So that's why it's in Azot. So the Gemara straight away challenges this. Remember the whole Dibur Lashon Kasha. You're assuming, you're saying that any time it says Lashon Dibur, it's Lashon Kasha. It's a harsh, firm language. Is that really true? So the Gemara answers, and yes. That Dibero Ish Adoini Aretz Itana Kashas in Parashas Miketz, where Shvatim come back to Yaakov and they say that the Melech, the second in command, who was really Yosef, spoke to us harsh and uses the word Diber, and then it proceeds to explain that his taka was Kashas. Dibero Ish Adoini Aretz Itana Kashas. From there we see that the Lashon Diber is a Lashon Kasha, is harsh. But when it says Vayomer, it's more gentle. So the Gemara asks, Akasha Valtani, we learned in the Brisa, which says otherwise. The Brisa says Nidbru, when the Pasuk says in Malachi, Oz Nidbru Yirei Hashem, the Yirei Hashem will speak one to the other. So we say over there, Ein Nidbru Ela Lashon Nachas, that Nidbru is a Lashon Nachas, is a gentle Lashon. And Nidbru is also from the root of Daber, Dalad Beis Reish. So make up your mind. Is it, you want to tell me that Nidbru is Lashon Kasha, but in the Brisa we see that the Brisa explains that Nidbru is Nachas. And another ayah is V'cheinu. Similarly, there's another pasuk in Tehillim where it says Yad Ber Amim Tachteinu, which is the same root of Dalad Beis Reish, and it means to lead the nations. And there it also is understood. It's Lashon Nachas. It's not anything harsh. It's talking about, as Rashi says, Yinal Amim Tachteinu. You should lead the nations. So the Gemara answers Daber L'chod Yidaber L'chod, even though it's the same root, Dalad Beis Reish, but still we make a difference. When it says Diber or Daber or Vayidaber, so that's L'chod, then it's Taka Kasha. Yidaber, when it says the lashon of Yadber, yeah, or in other words, or for that matter, Nidburu, where it's it's not just the word Vayidaber, so then it's different. Daber L'chod Yidaber L'chod. Let's see Rashi. So when it says Nidbru or Yidaber Am Tachteinu, how do you pronounce that? Yadber Am Tachteinu. So it's not the word Vayidaber. It's not in lashon Dibur. So then it's not kasha. Then it's nachas. But when we're learning Vayidaber or Yidaber is lashon kasha. Says Rashi, top of the Amar. But lashon Azu b'chol Yeshua k'sev Vayom Hashem. Everywhere else in Yeshua says Vayom Hashem. Kana Vayidaber Hashem el Yeshua. But Dibur lashon Azu. Dibur is a lashon of harshness, strength. So Gemara answers Nishan Shel Torah. All the other Amirs where HaKadosh Baruch Hu talks to Yeshua, he wasn't telling him to be Mekayim a mitzvah k'suva b'Torah chutz mizu. This is the only time that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was telling Yeshua to be Mekayim a mitzvah which is written in the Torah. So therefore it says in a harsh language, different pratim given. So what? If it's nation Torah should be nation shel Torah should be in a harsh language. Some say because you may have to make a distinction between the lashon of the Navi and the lashon of the Torah. So in lashon Torah it says Vayidaber Hashem, and here it says Vayomer Hashem. So when we're talking about a davar shel Torah, so it goes back to lashon Vayidaber Hashem. Yad ba'am yinal amim tachtein. Okay. The Gemara continues with a related machloikas regarding this topic of why it says by Ari Miklat, the parish of Ari Miklat in Yeshua, why it said with the lashon of kasha, why it's lashon aza with vayidaber, and taka there's a machlokes amiroim. Pligi bar Rabbi Yehuda is Tanoim actually. Pligi bar Rabbi Yehuda the Rabbanon. Rabbi Yehuda argues with the Rabbanon. I think it's Tanoim. Rabbi Yehuda the Rabbanon. Chad amim neisha shiem, chad amim neisha shelter. One says no, it's not different chat that we said earlier. Neisha shiem means he delayed. He didn't do it straight away. He had to wait. HaKadosh Baruch Hu had to remind Yeshua to make the Ari Miklat. Even though Yeshua knew, Moshe Rabbeinu, Yeshua was around, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe about the Ari Miklat. He knew that he had to make the Ari Miklat. This was right. HaKadosh Baruch Hu was mitzvah Klal Yisrael to make Ari Miklat when he went into Eretz Yisrael. But Lemais Yeshua didn't. He procrastinated, whatever. He delayed, and he didn't do it until HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him. So that's why HaKadosh Baruch Hu Vayidaber. The HaKadosh Baruch Hu was kind of upset. The other one says, the other Tana says Nation Shelter, that same reason that we mentioned earlier in the name of Recham Rechanina, that it was because it's Nation Shelter, because it's words of Torah, because it's Bimekayim and Mitzvah of Torah. So since we're on this note of Ari Miklat, so we say another machlekes with regards to Ari Miklat, and there could also be another connection between this Gemara and the next Gemara, is that all the next few pieces in the Gemara are all cases where Rabbi Yehuda argues with another Tana, and we don't know who says what. It's one of the Chadam and Chadam. So here we have another machlekes Rabbi Yehuda and someone else. Before it was Rabbi Yehuda Rabban, and here's Rabbi Yehuda Nechami. Pligi bar Rabbi Yehuda Nechami. Sorry, my mistake. Vayichtav Yeshua sadvar me'ela b'sevet Torah salikim. It's a pasuk in Yeshua where it says, "Vayichtav Yeshua es sadvar me'ela b'sevet Torah salikim." Yeshua wrote these things in the Sefer Torah salikim. So what does hadvar me'ela mean? So what's it referring to? So Pligi bar Rabbi Yehuda Nechami. Rabbi Yehuda Nechami argue what we're talking about when you say that Yeshua wrote in the Sefer Torah Salikim. The problem over here is, what do you mean Yeshua wrote in the Sefer Torah Salikim? Torah Salikim is referring to Torah's Moshe, to the Chamish Chumshi Torah. What's Pshav? Yichtiv Yeshua Sadvar Me'ela b'Sefer Torah Salikim. So there's some sort of connection, obviously, between what Yeshua is writing and the Chamish Chumshi Torah. So the machlekes Rabbi Yehuda Nechami. Chadam Shmoyne Psukim. One Tana. Correct me, yeah? Nechami is the name of a Tana or is it an Amora? Huh? It could be it's an Amora, I don't know. Rabbi Yehuda is both, right? So either it's Rabbi Yehuda who's a Tana or Rabbi Yehuda who's a...
Well, generally when they say Pligiba,
it's an Amora, huh?
I would assume so.
Yeah, I think you're right. So I have to change. It's an Amora. Pligiba Rabbi Yehuda and Nechami. Rabbi Yehuda and Nechami argue about what was written in Sefer Torah. What Yeshua was writing down in Sefer Torah. One says very simple. We know there's a machlekes in Bava Basra and other places. What's the last after Moshe Rabbeinu passed away? So then, how could it says in the past by Yamos Moshe, right? And the last 8 psukim of the Torah already are talking. The last 8 psukim of the Zoysa Bracha are already talking after he passed away. So how could Moshe Rabbeinu write that part of the Torah? So there's a machlekes over there in the Gemara and Bava Basra and other places. So some say that Yeshua Taka wrote it. That it's not the 8 psukim is an exception to the rule. In other words, the whole Torah was written by Moshe Rabbeinu, besides the 8 psukim which Yeshua wrote. Another besides that, Moshe Rabbeinu wrote in advance, so to speak. He wrote the story of how, it says he wrote with his tears. He wrote that he was going to that he died, even though he hadn't yet died. It was like so. But Rabbi Yehuda, one of them Meiraim over here says that's pshat. Yichtiv Yeshua Sadvar made of Sefer Torah Salikim. The pasuk Taka saying that Yeshua wrote the 8 psukim. The last 8 psukim of Zoysa Bracha were written by Yeshua, but Sefer Torah Salikim in the Chamish Chumshi Torah. The Chadaim, another pshat is a no. Ari Miklat. It's referring to the parish of Ari Miklat. What does that mean, Ari Miklat? So in other words, he wrote it in the parish of Ari Miklat, which is written in Yeshua. Yeshua wrote down how Hashem told him about the Ari Miklat. So the Gemara straight away asked, it's very good according to the Mandam, which says he wrote down the 8 psukim. That's why it's that's pshat and pasuk when it said that. Then we understand how it says the Sefer Torah Salikim. Yeshua wrote in the Sefer Torah Salikim because Yeshua was finishing off the Chamish Chumshi Torah. Al Mandam Ari Miklat my Sefer Torah Salikim. What's pshat Sefer Torah Salikim? It's obviously not Kipshuta because it's not in the Chumash. Yeshua, the Ari Mikla, which is in Devarim, was taka written by Moshe. So when Yeshua is writing the Ari Mikla, must be referring to the parish Ari Mikla, which is in Sefer Yeshua. So what's Pshat Sefer Torah Salikim? So the Gemara says Hachi Kamek. You have to explain it with the Hachi Kamek. This is what it means to say according to this Pshat. Vayichtiv Yeshua b'Sifroi, that Yeshua wrote in his Sefer as Advarim Ha'ela Hakson b'Sefer Torah Salikim. Right? That he wrote in Sefer Yeshua those things. In other words, the topic which was already written in Sefer Torah Salikim, which is the topic of Ari Mikla, the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Yeshua to set up the Ari Mikla. So you read it, Vayichtav Yeshua. The pasuk says, Vayichtav Yeshua as advar ma'ela b'sefer Torah Salikim. Vayichtav Yeshua in his sefer as advar ma'ela b'sefer Torah Salikim. Those things which were already brought down in the Sefer Torah Salikim, meaning the Ari Miklat. which was already in Hamishchum Sheter.
What's the spot of these Hachikam? Is it that they made a mistake in the writing? It's a different Gersa, or is it the person who didn't communicate properly?
But here we're talking about Tanakh. I mean, it's not a Mishnah Chisur Mexer. No, we're not rewriting. It's not a different Gersa. We mean say this is what the Torah means. Although the literal translation of the Torah sounds like something else, Pshat in the Torah is not. It's like a koloimer. You know, it means to say something which it doesn't exactly say. In this case, that's Hachikam usually means this is what he means to say. Yeah. Okay. So now we have another machlokes from Yehuda and somebody else. This time it's nothing to do with Ari Miklot, but I guess the connection is that it's a pligi bar of Yehuda. It's Rabbi Yehuda with another Amira arguing. Again, I'm starting to think it's a Tana again because pligi bar of Yehuda Rameh it says over here, right? I don't know. I don't think it's an Amira Rameh. Okay. Pligi bar of Yehuda Rameh. Rabbi Yehuda and Rameh argue. What are they talking about? Sefer Shetafra Pishta. Rabbanan can be both. Yeah. But here, Rabbi Yehuda Rameh, I think it's a Tana. Sefer Shetafra Pishtan. Here we're talking about Sefer Torah, which was Tafru B'Pishtan. It was sewed together with flax, with linen. So is it kosher or not? Yehuda Rameh argue with the Sefer Torah, right? The cloth, it's made of different pieces of cloth, and then you sew together the pieces of cloth. So what happens if you sewed it together with Pishtan? Is it kosher or not? So Yehuda Rameh, Chad Ama Kosher, the Chad Ama Pasal. One says it's kosher, one says it's pasal. So I explain what's the svar of each one. The man Ama Pasal, one it says it's pasal, very simple. Why? The pasuk says in the parasha of Tefillin, the pasuk says, "The tefillin should be a ois al yad chazikar b'neinach leman tia Torah Hashem b'ficha." In order that the Torah should be in your mouth. Tashas, it means that the Torah reminds you to keep the Torah. But from the fact that the pasuk juxtaposes, puts together Torah and Tefillin, we learn different halachas out one from the other. In fact, I believe that the whole klal, at least according to one shitta, that nashim of Torah mitzvah seishes mangram is from this pasuk. We know that nashim apart from limit Torah because it says v'lematim es b'neichem, right? B'neichem le'bnei seichem. So tefillin is iskash to Torah, and once we know that tefillin is women apart, we say that anything which is similar to tefillin, all the mitzvah seishes mangram. But anyway, here we're learning something else out from the man Tia Torah Hashem b'ficha. The fact that tefillin is compared to Torah. Iskash kol Torah kol tefillin. The whole Torah is here being compared to tefillin. So ma tefillin halach l'meishim b'sinin is Torah from beginning. Just like tefillin, we know there's halach l'meishim b'sinin with regards to tefillin. The Torah from beginning, you have to sew it with gidin, with sinews, with of an animal, not with anything else. Af kol the Torah from beginning. So too, whenever it comes to Sefer Torah, to anything to, so also with Torah, and right, it also has to be with gidin. I think af kol means to include mezuzahs and things like that as well. Anything which we're writing, any Torah thing which we're writing has to be sewed together with gidin. That is, just 1 second. So the Gemara asks the Idach, what the other man Dama said. The man Dama says that to be Torah for begidin is taka kosher by Torah. He doesn't hold of this hakish. The Gemara answers, no, he does hold of the hakish, but ki iskash lemuta beficha lehuchoysav leiskash. He's only compared for certain things. It's compared lemuta beficha. We know that the tefillin have to be written on the cloth of a behemoth tahira. It's learned out of the man Tia Torah Hashem beficha. It has to be something which can go in your mouth. It can be something which is mutter for a yid to eat. So the Sefer Torah also has to be written on the cloth, which is from a behemoth Torah, but the other halachas is not compared. And I believe Rashi explains that, in other words, only those things which are clearly written in the Torah with regards to tefillin, those dinim which are written in the Torah with regards to tefillin, we compare Torah to tefillin. But the halacha l'moshe messina is the things which are just Kabbalah, midor l'dor, which we know that tefillin you're not allowed to be Torah beginning, or any other halacha of tefillin, we don't compare Torah to tefillin. Amar Rav says, I saw the tefillin of my uncle, Reb Chia, the tefiri bechisna, that they take a word so together with pishtan. But let's focus on kavase. Now the problem with this Gemara is that nobody says that tefillin in the early Gemara that tefillin can be done with pishtan. The whole machlokes is only with regards to Sefer Torah and whether Sefer Torah was compared to tefillin. But we had established that tefillin was halach l'moshe misinai. The tefillin has to be sewed with gidin. So what's pshat that Rav saw the tefillin of his uncle, which was tefiri bekisna, of a less hilchos kavase. That's not nobody. There's no opinion which says right tefillin was a given that tefillin can't be sewed with pishtan. So therefore, taka other people are gurious instead of tefillin. The Ritva, it's not just on the side of the Gemara. Even the Rishonim, for example, the Ritva, he says we're not gurious tefillin. Chazina lu lesifri debei chavivi or lethilim debei chavivi. Either the Sefer Torah or the Tehillim of Reb Chia, which is tefiri bekisna. Less hilchos kavase. The halacha is not like it because we pass in that even the Sefer Torah has to be with gidin. But tefillin, everyone agrees. It's not possible that Reb Chia would have passed tefillin. Yeah, because that's Torah. There's a machlokes. So he could have held like that day, which holds like that Tana, which holds that it's kosher, but not with regards to tefillin. Yeah, what were you going to say? Someone's going to ask something.
No, you're saying mezuzah also.
I think so. What's the coil? I don't know.
You say mezuzah don't get sewn.
Just one piece. Okay, so it's probably wrong, right? Yeah, they're just the lashon lekoil. Af koil the from the beginning.
The throwing is only good in that for back.
Yeah, that's what it's saying. It- Right, that's what we're talking about. Yeah,
Megillah.
could be. Let's see Rashi. Going back to Mipnesha Shihem, that's what we're up to. Shaloyif, right, the fourth line of Rashi. Shaloyif Risham la'acha shanet chokumiyah, that he didn't separate them straight away when they distributed the land. Achanem le'pirkaz baruch, who told him, and that's why he was Azza. He was upset. Pliga b'perusha d'haikra. Makkos Yisroel saved. Tell you what did Yisroel right when he says Vayich to Yisroel? Chad Omer Shmoyne Psukim Mimis. Maybe the Yom Moshe had Sefer from where it says that Moshe passed away until the end of the Torah. Chad Omer Parashas Ari Miklat who Omer Shikshulu b'Sefer Yeshua. So with the Parashas Ari Miklat, he's saying that it was written in Sefer Yeshua, and Yeshua wrote it. The man Tia Torah is the beginning of the pasuk in Mishlei B'Tfilin. The Ishkashach Torah. Right, the man Tia Torah is the hemshech of the pasuk is continuing from talking about Tfilin. Ki Ishkash lemuter b'ficha, according to the man Dam who says that Tfilin is mutter to be toifer with pishtan. Why is it not? Sorry, that Sefer Torah is mutter to sew with pishtan. Why was it not compared to Tfilin? Because he holds ki Ishkash lemuter b'ficha. The hakish is only with regards to the din of the mutter b'ficha. The siv b'haikra b'ficha. It says, and we learn from them in a mutter b'ficha. It can only be from something which is permissible to be eaten, meaning Tefillin cannot be written on the klaf, on the skin of a impure tummy animal, and that we apply to Torah. That Sefer Torah also has to be written on the klaf of behemoth tahira. But with regards to the other dinim, this man Dama will hold. But no, we don't compare Tefillin to Torah. Only that which is clearly in the Torah, but the halach lehilchosei and the davar she'ein kasav b'Torah, those dinim which aren't written in the Torah. With Tefillin gufayu lo gomin le'elam halach l'moshe misina. But Tefillin itself, it's halach l'moshe lo yapinu b'hekesh. In other words, it makes sense that the hekesh should only be comparing the hekesh is in the pasuk. So we only learn those things which are learned out of the pasuk, but not the hilchosei. The ma'aseh halacha is that we paskin that Tefillin shetafru begidin is taka pasul because the hekesh is a complete hekesh even to this din of how to sew the Torah, the Sefer Torah, which has to be sewed with gidin because the hakish is a complete hakish. We learn Torah from Tefillin even with regards to those dinim, which even by Tefillin are only halach l'meishim siyah. The Bei Chavivi Doidi, my uncle, that's what Chavivi means. Achi Abba, the brother of his father, V'hu Rebchir is Rebchir. Okay, that is kind of.
Just right by the
Tefillin.
question of kol.
Yeah.
He makes it af kol Torah kula.
Okay. Right, the whole Torah, yeah. And that fits in the lashon. Iskish kol Torah kol Tefillin. That's the lashon of the Gemara earlier. Okay, so now we get to a different topic really. Spoke in the previous mission, we're talking about where the Ari Miklat were and who would go to, how would they go to Ari Miklat. Here we're talking about how long they stay in the Ari Miklat. So we know the pasuk says Ad Mois Kohen Gadol, until the Kohen Gadol passes away. For some reason, once the Kohen Gadol passes away, so then the Gemara will shed some light on it. There's other reasons given by the Farshei HaTorah why the Ritzach B'Shoig stays in Galus until the Kohen Gadol passes away. But here the Mishnah is going to first discuss which Kohenim Gedolim pass away, which Kohen Gedolim have to pass away in order for the Ritzach to go out of Galus. So here the Mishnah says, whether we're talking about Kohen Gadol who became Kohen Gadol through being Mashuach B'Shem and Amishcha, right? Some Kohenim Gedolim who became Kohenim Gedolim through being anointed with the Shem and Amishcha. The Echad Amru B'Gadol means a Kohen Gadol who wasn't a Kohen Gadol by means of the Shem and Amishcha. The only way he was a Kohen Gadol, the only thing which distinguished him from the other Kohenim was the fact that he wore the Shemona Begadim. He was appointed the Kohen Gadol. He wore the 8 Begadim. He's the Kohen Gadol. It doesn't make a difference which type of Kohen Gadol we're talking about. Rashi will explain. There's different Tekufas in history. Certain Tekufas in history, the Kohen Gadol was Mashur B'Shem and Mishcha, and then later on the Kohanim Gedolim were no longer anointed with the Shem and Mishcha. They were just Kohanim Gedolim by virtue of wearing the Shemona Begadim. And now a third Kohen Gadol, the Echad She'avim Mimshichosei. Similarly, another type of Kohen, Rashi explains, means that sometimes they would substitute the Kohen Gadol with another Kohen Gadol just temporarily, and then he would, right? Let's say Kohen Gadol had a carry or some other thing which disqualified the Kohen Gadol temporarily. Let's say he was ill, so they would put someone else in place, and he would have the din of a Kohen Gadol. But even if he's also a Kohen Gadol who would be Machzir Neser Ritzach, meaning to say, you could have a Kohen Gadol. The Kohen Gadol would be out of commission for 2 weeks. We put another Kohen Gadol in place. The old Kohen Gadol will go back into his place, and the second Kohen Gadol will still remain the din of Kohen Gadol. Like if he passed away, the Ritzach would go free, would go out of the army. Rabbi Yehuda says, Af Mashuach Muchama Machzir Ritzach. Even a different type of Kohen Gadol. Kohen Gadol who was appointed just for the purpose of, he was called Mashuach Muchama. He was anointed for the purpose of leading the war. right? The psukim in Parashas Kitzeitze, where it talks about the Klein would say, someone who is worried, afraid of war, or who just built a bona bais chadash, whatever he would do, he doesn't have to go to war, and he would leave the war, and he would make these instructions. He was also considered a Kohen Gadol for the din of being machzes ritzeh. The Mishnah continues, lefichach, therefore, because of this din that the Kohen Gadol who passes away lets the ritzeh go out of galus. Lefichach imoisen shal kohen, a very interesting din over here. The mothers of the kohenim misafkis lan michyoksus would. It's interesting. The Mishnah is telling you a story, or is the Mishnah telling you a din that this is what they should do? It sounds like it's just saying a story. The fichach, which is unusual, the Mishnah normally tells us halachas. The fichach imoisen shal kohen, the mothers of the kohenim misafkis lan michyoksus would provide clothing and food for the roitzchem in the Ari Miklat. Right, so basically the mothers of the Kohen Gedolim had vested interest that their children would stay alive, and they were worried that the Ritzeh B'Shoigig, who knows that he's going to get out of Golus earlier when the Kohen Gadol passes away, that he shouldn't daven for the Kohen Gedolim to die. The Gemara is going to address the kasha. What do you mean? I mean, if I daven that someone else should die, so he dies. I mean, is that how it works? If someone deserves to die, he's going to die. If he doesn't deserve to die, he's not going to die. Why would the Ritzeh B'Shoigig davening for the Kohen Gadol cause the Kohen Gadol to die to such an effect that we need the mothers of the Kohen Gedolim to counteract that, to kind of make sure and tell, provide for the Ritzim so that they don't daven, right? So the Gemara is going to deal with that question.
What do you use the term Ritzeh for people who killed by accident?
That's a very good question. And
like, we're not differentiating.
What is the word that's
Ritzeh b'shegeg? We're not. Ritzeh means murderer.
I know. So
Some
say
the whole previous stop and we're.
It's interesting. I once heard, if I may mention this by Shiur, but I once heard Dennis Prager thinks he's a big chacham in Judaism, but he once said this word, that murder. The word for in the Torah for ritzicha is only for murder, but when you kill somebody, there's a difference between killing when you kill somebody and you're not culpable. So then you're. So the truth is, I found that I think the Rashbam in Loy Tzirtzach in Yisroel Taka says this far, but the Pashtus it's not true, because by the Ari Miklat, the Ritzeh B'Shoigi is called a Ritzeh. The pasuk uses the word Ritzeh.
Clearly saying that it's someone who did it by accident. Otherwise, even someone who had a hint of a reason that we could have said he did it on purpose, we're not going to give him go.
Yeah, the pasuk uses. I remember even seeing Aaron Lakutis Sichas addressing this issue. Sicha being whether it's the point is that Mistama the Vart is still true, but I think the Vart is still true that when you kill somebody and you're not culpable at all, then it's taka called hariga. But here, Ritzicha, at the end, you're getting punished. It's an act of murder. A packet, so it's unintentional.
The Rebbe, I'm sure the Rebbe would have a word, because we always try to not say,
I think it's just an R.
Negative word.
Yeah, but I don't think it's part of the main set. It's like an R in the bottom. Whether the Lashon Ritzeh, but Kopanim, this is an interesting point. Yeah, the Maisa, the Torah uses the word, so therefore I feel comfortable using the words. Yeah, the Torah uses the word Ritzeh. Yeah, yeah. So it says the Gemara Vaita. So let's see Rashi. Rashi, he explains, yeah, until Yoshiyahu HaMelech there was Shem HaMishcha. From the days of Yoshiyahu and onwards, Shem HaMishcha was hidden. Don't ask me why, I don't know my history. The Gemara says in Hairis that the Shem HaMishcha was hidden as the days of Yoshiyahu. It seems that the Shem HaMishcha wasn't ma'akev in making a Kohen Gadol. In other words, if you have Shem HaMishcha, then you use it. If you don't, the Kohen Gadol can still remain a Kohen Gadol by appointing him and by wearing the Shemona Begadim, and he's got a din Kohen Gadol. So Rashi explains, She'ir psul b'Kohen Gadol. If there's a psul in the Kohen Gadol, Shemish achay tachtav, or Shenisrape Kohen, when the Kohen got better, which is an interesting lush, because we just said psul. Why are we saying Nisrape? Psul. So psul means something was wrong. The Kohen Gadol became invalidated somehow. I think one way the Kohen Gadol becomes invalidated, for example, is if his wife passes away. So on Yom Kippur, at least for Yom Kippur, he can't be the Kohen Gadol, because there's a Kippur about base of Adish, the first mission Sachas Yoma. So maybe that's an example. Why does it say Shenisrape Kohen? So I look in Hagoyis Tzionim Hey. Oh, just change it to Kohen Gadol. Okay. I guess any situation where it's just an interesting lashon. I guess the Kohen could be ill as well, and like another Kohen Gadol could take his place. Shenisrape Kohen, when the Kohen got better, Chazal Avidasai. Maybe Rashi's only psul b'Kohen Gadol means he got a mum, a certain mum, which is a mum over, a mum which passes it, right? So he's taka, maybe it's possible to be a Kohen Gadol during that time, but then came better. Anyway, either way, when the Kohen Gadol comes back, the other one goes back, has been removed from being anointed to being the Kohen. But misas, any of these different types of Kohenim Gedolim return the Ritzech when they pass away. In other words, when they pass away, the Ritzech. Maybe doesn't say clearly. Psal close to carry. Yeah, Shinshap is mashma. Yeah, I don't know. So therefore, that's the marker. Mashuach Muchama, Kain Mashuach Eloima b'Muchama Tzarich Muchama Al Yerech Levach Muchalim. Kain was anointed to say the Muchama, all the different inyanim of the Muchama. Okay, that's getting running out of time. Let's keep it moving. Says the Gemara, V'ayta Minohani Mili. So the Gemara is Kashmi Minohani Mili. Obviously, it's not Minohani Mili that the Ritzeh goes out of Ir Mikra when the Kohen Gadol passes away. That's a Beferish Pasuk. The Minohani Mili, Pshat Minohani Mili is how do we know that all these different types of Kohenim Gedolim, even though they're different levels and some are kind of more of a Kohen Gadol, like a Mashuach B'Shem Namishcha, like the Emes of Kohen Gadol. How do we know that all these different types of Kohenim Gedolim cause the Ritzech to go out of our Mikra? So Amar Rav Kahana says that there's basically three psukim which say that the Ritzech stays in that Ir Mikra until the Kohen Gadol passes away. So why does he need to tell me three times? So the fact that it says it three times, we learn out of that three different types of Kohenim Gedolim. What are the three psukim? There's one pasuk in Parashas Masay, I believe, which says that he stays at Moisa Kohen Gadol, Asher Moshe Chayze B'Shem Nachodesh, right? The pasuk continues Asher Moshe Chayze B'Shem Nachodesh. So that would, if we only had that pasuk, you would think it has to be Asher Moshe Chayze B'Shem Nachodesh. The pasuk says Asher Moshe Chayze, and maybe a Kohen Gadol who wasn't Nimshach with the Shem and Amishcha Yitaka won't go out. So that's why we have other psukim, right? So Uchsiv says another pasuk, Be'ir Miklata Yeshiv Ad Moisa Kohen Gadol, and in that pasuk, the second pasuk, it doesn't say anything about Shem and Mishcha, so we include even a Kohen Gadol who's just Merubah B'Begadim. Uchsiv, and it says in the pasuk, another pasuk, Achri Moisa Kohen Gadol, right? There's different psukim. It's the same pasuk. Be'ir Miklata Yeshiv Ad Moisa in Parashas, also in Parashas Masay. A few psukim later, Be'ir Miklata Yeshiv Ad Moisa Kohen Gadol, Achri Moisa Kohen Gadol, Yashvar Seichel Eretz HaChazas. So because it's three times Mois Kohen Gadol in reference to the Ritzeh going out of their Mikla, so we know three different types of Kohenim Gedolim, which are three types which are mentioned by the Tanakama: Mashuach B'Shem Namishcha, Merubah B'Begadim, and Avim Mishchos. So the substitute Kohen Gadol is no longer Kohen Gadol. If he passes away, he's also considered a Kohen Gadol for the din of the Ritzeh going out of our Mikla. V'idach means the other Tanner, Rabbi Yehuda, who says that even the Mashuach Muchama is also included. So he says skipped. Rabbi Yehuda, Ksiv Krach, and it says another pasuk, Lashuv L'Shavas Ba'aretz Ad Moisa Kohen. This is a pasuk also in over there in Parashas Masay, where it says Lo Yisikhu Koyfe Lanos Alim Miklat Lashor. It's really talking about not that a person shouldn't pay his way out of getting miklat, like by paying money. So redeeming himself, he's not allowed to do that. And there it says Ad Moisa Kohen. So we learn out of there another type of Kohen Gadol. The Idach, so why does the Tanakama not learn a fourth type of Kohen Gadol? Why does Tanakama argue and say that Mashuach Muhammad isn't included? Can the Gemara takes from the Pshittas because it's not just adding something that Tanakama omitted. The Tanakama Taka holds that Mashuach Muhammad wouldn't be Maxis or Itzeach. So the Idach, I don't know what the halacha is. Let's see Rambam. The Idach, how do we know? So he says the Loik Siva Gadol. Since in the fourth passage it doesn't say Hagadol, Chad Me Anoch. It's just repeating what it said earlier. It's not telling you a new din in the Kohen Gadol. It's just right. If it would have wanted to tell you a new Kohen Gadol, it would say Kohen Gadol. From the time it says Moisa Kohen, it's kind of the Kohen that we spoke about earlier. I'm not telling you something new, and therefore we're just left with three Kohen Gadols who cause the Ritzech to go out of Mikla.
Wouldn't it make more sense to say that a Kohen
right
in this context?
That's Takor Yehuda, we'll say.
Like it makes sense to say
it's not such a Kohen Gadol, right?
That's what a Mashuach Muhammad is.
Yeah,
not a regular, not a Kohen Gadol.
Yeah, I think someone asked that question. I can't remember what he answers yet. I remember seeing that. Yeah, let's see Rashi. Or let's wait. We'll do Rashi later. The Fichakim we say in Shal Koinim, right? The rest of the end of the Mishnah, it says that Misayin Shal Koinim would provide Michyok, food and clothing, so that the Ritzeach wouldn't daven for them to die. So says the Gemara, time of the sounds like the reason why they, in other words, that the reason why the Kohen Gadol would be saved, the reason why the Misayin Shal Kohen would make sure that would provide was the loy matzah, so that they shouldn't daven. But if Taka the Reitzchem would daven Maisi, would Taka cause the Kohen Gedolim to die? We see in the pasuk, just like a bird flies, and kidroi la'oif is another type of bird. In other words, that does just like a bird goes and comes back. So too a kilaskinam, a klala for no reason won't. You'll shoot it, but it'll come back to you. The Mefarshim on the pasuk over there says that taka kilaskinam goes back to the person who made the klala. Right? If someone makes a klala against somebody and that other person doesn't deserve it, the person who makes the klala will get it himself, just like a bird which comes and goes back. But akopanim, what we're trying to, at the very least, the pasuk tells to saying that kilas chinam doesn't work. You curse somebody, if he doesn't deserve it, then the klala is worthless, right? So what's pshat? So Amar lahua husab in Pirkei Rav Shmili. There was a husab, an old person who says that who said me Pirkei Rav Shmili by the Shiur of Rabbi. I heard the following pshat: Shahayil and the vakish rachmal derim v'lo bikshu. In other words, it's not a kilas chinam. The Klein Gedolim was somewhat deserving of dying, maybe not literally, maybe not somewhat deserving, and therefore the klala of the ritzeh, the tefillah of the ritzeh, could cause him to die. What's the why do they deserve it? Shahayil and the vakish rak maldarim v'lo bikshu. The Kohen Gedolim should have davened for the generation that they shouldn't be stumble with such a sin of killing b'shoigeg. It's the Kohen Gadol's job on Yom Kippur to daven for everybody. So some Rishonim asked the question of the Chorah, free choice. How do
No, but it's a mistake, so it's not free.
But the fact that they're getting punished means there's some element of culpability. Otherwise, you wouldn't. Right? You wouldn't get punished for something which isn't connected to free choice.
For them making some kind of mistake.
So that's the question. Yeah, I can't remember what the answer. That's the issue over here.
Meaning
Just give it a minute. Pastors on the generation.
It's too late to help these people, though. I'm saying
they should have done it.
So this person's generation, this never happened,
Yeah, right.
Stories. So.
Right. Yeah. Shaila and the Vakish Akmal Dorim V'lo Bikshu. The Kohen Gedolim should have davened, and he brings a raya. We'll soon see. For Ikedemasni, some people take a learn pshat in the Mishnah. Kedei sheispalu al b'neim shelo yamusu. The other way around. That the imisayin shel kohenim would be mesafkes lamichir chsus, not that they shouldn't daven that they should die, but rather they should daven that they shouldn't die. Even stronger. In other words, the default, if the roitzim are passive, they do nothing. They neither daven one way nor the other. What's going to happen? According to the first pshat, we said until now, nothing's going to happen. The Kohanim Gedolim will live. The only concern was that they will actually daven that they die. Here, the next pshat in the Mishnah Taka is that the other way around. If they sit and do nothing, the Kohanim Gedolim will Taka die. We need the roitzim b'shoigeg to daven for the Kohanim Gedolim, and the Kohanim Gedolim shouldn't die. So it's the same question, just a much stronger one, yeah? The mothers of the Kohanim would provide food and clothing so that the Roitzim would take a daven for their children. So the Gemara asks the same question. The reason why the Kohanim Gedolim would live was because they would take a davening. So the implication is if they didn't daven, if the Roitzim wouldn't daven, they would take a daven. Right? What should they do? And here the Gemara asks. Even stronger hachamrin, and over here in Bavel they say the following: Tuvi chatav a zigud mangid is a saying. It's based on the story in Ari Psachim that Tuvi did an avera. Zigud came and was 1/8, and he was put in chayrim for testifying as 1/8. So Zigud said, "Tuvi chatav zigud mangid. Tuvi did avera, and I'm going to get punished." Whenever one person gets punished for someone else's averas, there's this saying that they used to say in Bavel: Tuvi chatav zigud mangid. Tuvi did an avera, and Zigud's going to get in chayrim. Zigud's going to get punished. I believe so. Yeah, see Rashi in a moment. Hasam Amin Eretz Yisrael. They said another saying based on what happened in Eretz Yisrael. The saying, right? Different countries have different ways of Shechem Nosiv or Mivgei Gazer. Shechem married, meaning Shechem took Dinah and had Hannah from taking Dinah. Or Mivgei is the name of another guy in Shechem. Gazer, he has to have a bris milah. In other words, when they heard that the Anshe Shechem heard that they needed to take a bris milah because Shechem wanted to marry Dinah, Shechem's going to get married and we're going to have a bris milah and we're going to go through the pain of having it. It's also not fair. Anyway, the point is that why should one person, he kills b'shoigeg, the Kohen Gadol should get punished? So it's the same time. So I guess the question is much stronger, that even without the any klala, without the roitzkim davening, the default would be that they would die. So the Gemara says, Taka, yeah, you needed the roitzkim to daven. The question, by the way, is why the roitzkim daven? Anyone could daven for the Kohanim Gedolim. Why? So pshat is, I saw that it's whenever one person does an avera against somebody else, there's this notion that the person who the avera was done against could daven for the, in other words, if one person hurts another, the person who's hurt can daven b'zchus for the zchus. It's like al derech mechila, derech forgiving somebody. true forgiveness is when the victim. So here the ritzech is like the victim, because if not for the Kohen Gadol, if not for the Kohen Gadol, right. If not for the Kohen Gadol, the ritzech, exactly. I can't remember. Yeah, exactly. That's Taka the Makkah. You want to overcome, I think.
We just had,
We just have the noise, the topic, yeah. So I'm also, yeah. So okay, Kihani gives the story that who gathered the Ochle Arya Baraki class of Parsi, that we can see that one person is punished for another person's Avera, even when there's no davening involved. Like we see that who gathered the Ochle Arya Baraki class of Parsi, there was a person who a lion ate him up, and it was within 3 parse of Rabbi Shua ben Levi. That for 3 days Eliyahu didn't visit him. I guess Rabbi Shua ben Levi would get Eliyahu regular visits from Eliyahu and Avi, but for 3 days he didn't get visits. And the reason was because there was a lion which ate a person. It was nothing to do with him. But the point is that it was in his sviva, and the tzaddik has an influence over his sviva, that if something bad happens in the sviva tzaddik, the tzaddik is somewhat culpable. Yeah, let's see Rashi quickly. You know, let's finish the Gemara first. Okay, Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav. So since we're on the topic of killas, klala bechinam, so we continue by saying, we talk about the killas chacham. Now, killas chacham is like an exception. Even though up until now we said that klala bechinam nothing happens, and we had to explain that when the roitzchim davened for the Kohen Gadol to die, it wasn't bechinam. They somewhat deserved it. But klala bechinam wouldn't happen, right? If somebody curses somebody and he doesn't deserve it, nothing's going to happen. So now he says an exception. A chacham can be mekalal, and it's different. And even bechinam it comes. And Meiri, so Parsha Pshat in the connection between this Gemara and the previous Gemara is just it's an exception to the rule. We're on the topic of klala bechinam, so we explain that sometimes the klala bechinam does work. The Meiri says it's like it's an answer to the original kasha. In other words, that sometimes the ritzech b'shoigig could be a chacham, right? The ritzech b'shoigig could also be a talmid chacham who his klala will come even bechinam. So therefore, you don't even have to say that the Kainim Gedolim were responsible or culpable, even if they weren't. It could be so that's why they may say Shal Kainim will be misap because lamichipsos. But with pashtas, it's just because we're on that topic, so that's what we're continuing. How do we know that killas chacham, if for no reason taka comes from Achitoifa? What's the story with Achitoifa? When Dovid was busy digging the foundations of the Beis Hamikdash, boy lemishtefila alma. There was a it says a story over there. There was a klichara. I can't remember exactly the details now, but boy lemishtvil alma, he was digging over there, and water came out of the foundations of the Beis Hamikdash. I think Rashi's going to explain. Rashi will explain. Boy lemishtvil alma, there was going to be a flooding the whole world. Amar said, Dovid HaMelech asked the following question: Ma'u lichtav shema chaspa or mishta b'toima? What's the din? Can I write the shema of HaKadosh Baruch on a piece of earthenware and throw it in the tahaim, the leiku aduchte? Dovid HaMelech was somehow aware that if you could throw a piece of the shame of a piece of charis with the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it would calm down the flood. So he was asking people who were with him. No one said anything. Amar said, then he said, anyone who knows this matter knows the answer to my question, whether it's mutter to write the shame of Hashem and it's going to be erased because it's going to go into the water of the depths of the foundation, the water which is underneath the ground of the Beis Hamikdash. So anyone who knows this matter and doesn't tell me chanik b'groinu should get strangled. So Nos Achitoiv Kavachai Mas, but then Achitoiv opened his mouth. Achitoiv was the Rebbe of Dovid, and he said the following: if we're ready by Soita to make peace between a man and a wife, the Torah says that my name could be erased. To save the whole world isn't a Kavachai, and here too the Parshas Masakash, you need to cook nefesh deichel kol Torah kula, right? So it's different answers given. Now upon him, we don't have time for that right now. Amalei Shari. So he told him that therefore it's mutter. So what did Dovid Melech do? Dovid Melech Taka did Kasav Shem Achas. He wrote the name of Kadosh Baruch Hu on a piece of earthenware. Shadi Atomic threw it down to the depths of underneath the foundation of the Beis Hamikdash. Nachas become a dukte, and it rested, and the water stayed where it was, and it didn't come and flood the world, or whatever, it didn't flood the area. So Vafila Hachi, nevertheless, it says impossible. Later on, Achitoifa saw that Avshalom, when he was making a rebellion against Dovid HaMelech. So it says Achitoifa saw Kiloi Nasa Eitz. Avshalom didn't take his word, didn't take Achitoifa's advice. He committed suicide. He strangled himself. So he saw that he wasn't successful. He committed suicide and he strangled himself. So we see that ultimately Dovid HaMelech's curse ultimately ended up being true, even though it was al chinam. Dovid HaMelech only said, "If you don't tell me," but Achitoifa ended up telling him. Another example of this similar sort of thing. Killas chacham afil al t'nai yiba. Even when it's on a t'nai, there's a stipulation. As I say, if kach v'kach, then the klal is going to come, and if not. It's hiba, meaning if a chacham makes a klal and says, I'm going to, if you do such and such, I'm giving you a klala. Even if you don't do such and such, the klala can still come. Minalam from the story of Eli. Eli was the Klein God in the days of Shmuel. The Kamla Eli Shmuel. Eli said to Shmuel, "Ko yatzal chalkim ko Yosef im tichachem imani dava." So HaKadosh Baruch Hu should do to you if you don't tell me this nevuah. He had a nevuah to tell him, and if you don't tell it to me, koyas. Koyas means the same thing that happened to me, that my two children went off the derech, right? They didn't follow my ways, will happen to you. Even though it says that Shmuel Taka said all the different things, he didn't withhold anything from Eli, he didn't withhold the nevuah. Nevertheless, Taka says that his children didn't go in his way. Yeah, okay, we're going to stop over here, and I guess do you have to do Rashi by yourself? Yeah, say that. That's the Gemara. Very interesting Amma today. I'll stop over here.